Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to how to get started with APQP4Wind and how it benefits your company. My name is Kim Jokumsen, a General Manager of APQP4Wind. First, I will go through the agenda very fast. First is welcome and webinar instruction. Then we go on to OEM perspective, and then how to start implementation and ensure benefits. Then we go over to supplier perspective from FT technologies, and then we have Q&A session, and then we are finished. I'll give you a short webinar instruction. From now, we have around 60 minutes. It means that we will be finished around 10 o'clock. We will also have some surveys and Q&A session. You are welcome to write questions in the chat during the presentation. Questions will be answered in the Q&A session. The webinar will be recorded and published on the APQP4Wind website along with the presentation material. You will also receive an email with links to the recording and presentation material after the webinar. And now we'll have a survey. I will spend around 30 seconds on that. So please participate. Yes, and here you see the result. The most of you have some experience and also beginners. So it's a combination. We have also a few experts, I can see. Yes, we jump on to the next. See, yes, this one. I will give you a short introduction to APQP4Wind. Some of you already know it from our webpage or had participated in some of our early webinars. But for the new ones, I will give you a short introduction. We have APQP4Wind community with the secretary, a working group, training providers, company members, country ambassadors, and also a board of directors. Here you see our country ambassadors in Brazil, China, Germany, India, Poland, Spain, and in UK and USA and Canada. And you're of course welcome after the webinar to go to our webpage, and you are also welcome to contact the country ambassadors so you can have the dialogue in your local language. We have also a board of directors, and we have representatives from Vestas Wind Systems, KK Wind Solution, DE Renewable Energy, Goldwind, LM Wind Power, Siemens Gamesa Renewable Energy, ZF Wind Power, and we have an observer from Wind Denmark, Jan Hølberg, our CEO. And of course, we have the secretariat. You have already met me, but we have 5 persons in the secretariat, and you will also meet Ida Marie Garden-Proctor later. She is the lady behind the technical side of this webinar. We have also company members. You are of course welcome to be company member if you want that. You can read more about it in our webpage. And as you can see here, we have the 6 big OEMs who are participating and a lot of suppliers. We have also train providers, and they are global. We have Veritas, we have DNV, and we have TÜV Rheinland. And you are of course welcome to contact them if you need some training. Until now, we had people from 37 countries who have participated and received a certificate. So it's very impressed. Yes, back to the agenda. We will have an OEM perspective from Vestas Wind Systems. And I hope that the presenter, Henning Jokumsen from Vestas, will be on. So I will give the floor to him. Yeah, we have some technical problems. We hope we will solve the problems and have the person, Henning Jokumsen from Vestas, in the meeting later. So I think we will jump on to the next presenter. Let me see. How to start implementation and ensure benefits. And it's by Veritas and DNV. And I'll give the floor to the 2 guys, Bent and Ivan.
Yes, good morning all. My name is Bent Weibel. I'm the Senior Lead Auditor at DNV GL and one of the presenters for today. I have more than 30 years experience within quality management, and of that specifically 9 years in the wind industry in functions from production over engineering and quality. Apart from that, I'm certified trainer for the APQP4 Wind Management and Specialist Training. Ivan, will you present yourself as well?
Yeah, good morning everybody. My name is Ivan Mikkelsen and I have a similar position in Bureau Veritas, leading the training team for APQP4 Wind in our company, and I have had relationships to the wind industry since 2007 as employee and as training provider and workshop provider and projects. So also I joined this APQP4 Wind program with this role 4 years ago, based on a lot of years with quality management in automotive and automotive 16949 audits. That's what I spent the rest of my professional life with mainly. So I will start taking you into the considerations of getting implementation of APQP4Wind. And before leaving this wonderful picture, I think I will take you a tour to the past. And some of you might have been born in 1968, or some of you might even remember it. Do you remember the grassroots, the way that movements amongst people became to trends, became to something that changed the world? I love grassroots. I love to be part of challenging discussion, new ideas, and making things happen from inside and bottom up. You know, APQP4Wind actually also started as a grassroots movement back in 2012 or something like that. But it wouldn't have been where it is today if you didn't tilt it a little bit and took also a top-down approach and created an organization and a drive, a top-down drive. And what we are focusing on today is that internally in implementing APQP4Wind, even if you have wonderful people around in the organization, you also need a top-down approach to that. You need a management approach, a strategical approach. So that's what we are going to look a little bit on. First of all, to convince yourself and your company that there are benefits to gain here. Looking at the left side of this slide, you will see there are winners. You could nearly think, aren't we all winners? The society and the investors are winners if we are more efficient in the industry. They are unconditionally winners, you could say. They will get the benefits no matter what, more or less. And the developers, the OEMs, the supply chain actors, as I believe most of you are in this area, you also have the potential to be winners, and you have to do it in a competitive environment. And that's a nice opportunity that is the basis for your future. Aren't there any losers? I believe black and non-sustainable energy will be the losers in the long run. And I believe most of people today will not be too unhappy about that. Then next, you could meet the question, isn't that all hot air? And if you look at the right side of this slide, I think you will recognize there is a gold mine. There is an iceberg of cost of poor quality, which we are struggling with. There are warranty and retrofits, something we're struggling with today, and there will be more on that iceberg if we don't improve. And even if we do, there will still be some. So there's a lot of savings and efficiency to collect. Now we come to a central point there, not living the intention of DMATs. You might not have read the book, all of you. DMATs means design for manufacturing, assembly, transport, and service. So that is working together along the line to optimize the designs and work in parallel and not sitting one by one and optimizing things ourselves. So that's really where we need to challenge our habits. And only in that way, maybe we could avoid the control and inspection costs that's based on the low confidence we have in the next level, and also the non-alignment costs that we will get. So DMATs, design for manufacturer, assembly, transport, and service, is somehow the opposite to what we could call a CMA PMC approach, which is cover my ass and protect my comfort. you will not live DMATs without getting out of the comfort zone and working cross-functionally and together. We are aiming here today for the understanding that APQP4Wind is definitely a strategical decision that you need to take. So what do we mean about strategical decision? First of all, we believe that most of you are in the wind market. You have wind business as a priority, top priority, maybe you're 100% in the wind business. So you have seen somebody knocking the door and say structure is needed. So you somehow took the step in your mind. What you need to do is also to establish this formally as a priority. And say we will implement this like in the good old days. Maybe when you implemented ISO 9001, it started with it's a strategical decision. We put resources to it. We put up policies. So that will show the commitment. And by this aligning with the management system, you could also ask, could we take it any further? What other intentions do we have in this company? So this thing that breaks up our thinking, maybe it could contribute to some development of the organization that we also need. Management has to stand by this, and that means also when it becomes not comfortable, you need to stick on it and say, even if we didn't succeed, we still need to support it and to make it really happen. And then you could say, well, it's obvious, isn't it? But then look at the right side. And I believe some of you will have seen things happening like on the right side. That it is too discomforting, it's too overwhelming to make it happen. So you just let up a little bit and let the culture take over the priorities. So that's the strategical decision. For the implementation, you need certain steps. We will go into the project plan and timing in a moment. And before launching this, how? Maybe also think about the whys. Why are we doing this? By identifying the purposes. What more purpose could we put into this from management perspective? It might be the vehicle to something that you need to do as managers, so you can combine the purposes and work more efficient. To put up policies, to tell how you want to act and who you want to be in this context. It's something that the employees can buy into and say, well, looks nice, that's how we want to be. And then monitor if you are really what you want to be. So I put up some example of policies in the right side. It's some of the messages we find in APQP4Wind. We need to work together between departments and between companies. And we used to be proactive and do risk analysis. And also we need to be somehow open to the other companies. That's a challenge. And how do we ensure that it's not only something we say, and still, even if we say that, we think they are all here to cheat us. So we will still be protective more than open. And that's where you need the objectives, some kind of indicators, some kind of milestones that you can head against. So that was the beginning of this. So I will give over to Bent again. Unless...
Yes. Thank you, Ivan. It's always a challenge to follow your calm voice here. I believe the first little exercise here will be another survey that I would ask you to respond to, and then we will be back within, I believe it's 30 seconds. So please fill in. Example that we are working more towards the, sorry, I have an echo here.
Yeah, can't hear you, Bent. No, can't hear you.
Yes, do you hear me now? Great. Yes, then it seems everything is working. Can we advance a slide? Thank you very much. As mentioned by Ivan, it starts out with a strategic decision. It is followed up by a policy and a decision critical for your business if you are in wind to join the quality initiative and APQP4Wind. When that is said, the next thing we need to turn our attention to be a little more specific would be a gap analysis. You need to identify where is it my organization is with respect to implementing APQP4Wind. What is the gaps? Where do we need to place activities? First of them is relatively simple and maybe more in the direction of specific activities towards implementing APQP4Wind. We will need to start to identify gaps in our current management system. It is a requirement by APQP4Wind that you use and implement APQP4Wind to your current management system. It's not supposed to be a standalone. that is working besides the systems you are already using as a company. Next up, we need to identify if there is a competence gap on the quality management side, on quality tools or quality methods. I think most of you, of course, is aware about the requirements to quality tools. The APQP4Wind has decided to point against as the core tools: failure mode and effect analysis, control plans, measurement system analysis, and a level of statistical competence. So identify potential gaps within your organization and plan to do something to fill the gap here. We also need to identify resource constraints and gaps to specific projects. When you are executing, of course, the organization needs to be able to respond and have the resources needed to work with your customers and suppliers in specific projects. But the other side is more on the strategic side, on the policies or on the journey you as an organization is taking on, and maybe not so much on the specific projects. You need to consider if your organization is appropriate in relation to the project implementation. Cross-functional work, not only inside your own companies, breaking down barriers and silos, but also in the way you cooperate with your suppliers and with your customers. Also there can be a need to change structure or organization. You need to consider if a governance structure is needed to support the implementation. How is management involved? How do management support the projects? Finally, a tool to monitor and look at how we are doing. Competence on the constraints of the implementation project. Do we have the resources to manage the project, support it with our management resources? So the gap analysis is not only towards specific requirements taken out of the APQP manual. Do we have FMEA? Do we use the part submission warrant? Can we do the PPAP? There's many other areas where you need to make a gap analysis for a successful implementation. Next on, implementation, journey and project. Implementation of APQP4Wind is both a journey but also a project. The part with the journey, Ivan will come back to later in the session and talk a little about the journey, the different phases your organization most likely will go over. The project part, a journey of course consists of projects, activities, and constant adjustments to your plans, your projects and activities. And all of us, of course, is aware that a project is characterized by being time-framed, specific with actions, target, resources, and costs. To manage this in a good way, we tend to refer or recommend to look to Kotter's 8-step for leading change. If you're interested, please visit Kotter's site on the web and gain more information. Kotter's Institute has over decades proved that companies standing in front of a big threat or the big opportunity seems to be more successful if they follow a certain pattern, not to the letter, but in the intent of the 8 steps. So please look into Kotter's, a real good tool to run against your project, your initiatives, and see if you have the elements there to be successful. Then about the implementation, the monitoring, and how to harvest benefits. We must remember that only driving action is creating value. If we are doing, for instance, failure mode effect analysis without taking action to the obvious risks, then nothing will happen. If we do not execute, monitor our activities in the project, then nothing will happen. We need the actions, we need to be action-oriented in the implementation. It's also key to remember to verify effectiveness and efficiency of the actions that have been implemented. It's not sufficient to take an action, implement, and hope the best with respect to effectiveness and efficiency. Follow up, use the PDCA principles, plan, do, check, act. If there's a shortfall, replan, do, check, act again. Fundamental principles for the project implementation, also mentioned by APQP4Wind as a key principle. Finally, monitor, harvest. We need, of course, measurable objectives against our implementation. We need KPIs or PPIs, process performance indicators. Is our processes working as intended when we have implemented them? Also here, consider, as APQP4Wind anyway is part of and shall be part of your management system, to use your audit system that you have implemented to also monitor, follow up, and take actions if the APQP4Wind processes is not working and leading to non-conformities during audits. Finally, another tool where also APQP4Wind is moving currently, and there will be new initiatives launched and strengthened, is on the use of maturity assessment models. That can also be used as a gauge to measure, is the processes effective, efficient, what level are we currently performing at, and what is the next logic steps to take, where to focus our initiatives. So much to the implementation right now. There will now again be a little survey before Ivan will finalize the discussion on how to get started with the implementation, more specifically the journey that your company most likely will be going over. Thank you.
Everyone, this is Ida Marie talking, and I'm the communications and marketing consultant here at APQP4Wind. I will just send you the survey, so please answer the survey here, and we will just leave a few seconds for that, just like before. Okay, so I just ended the vote. Just now we have a idea of what you answer, and it looks like it is spread out a bit, but it seems that most of you say that the deployment of APQP4Wind is a company strategy, and that there are deployment plans and progress is being monitored. So that sounds good. That's a good sign. And then the others say mostly that there is no management decision, or that there is a management decision, but no specific deployment plans have been communicated. So I guess that's why you're also here, and why you can learn a bit more from Bent and Ivan in this webinar. And now I'm sending the presentation back to Ivan.
Yeah, hi again. I would just present an additional view of how APQP4Wind could help your organization and could help you in serving multiple purposes in your organizational development. And I hope this one is readable. So if you can follow this slide from, so to say, 12 o'clock, and then we will follow the direction of the clock around it. So one thing we embrace is the wonderful diversity of companies operating in the wind power supply chain. That's everything from global big organizations to nearly garage companies. And the clue here is that if we start at 12 o'clock, we will see the newborn organization. And everybody has been newborn at some point of time. Maybe one of the three persons are bigger than the other. That's maybe the owner. And if the company succeeds, at a point of time, they will need some structure. But they will very much like to work in this pioneer organization because it gives them a lot of dynamic and satisfaction. But when there are enough people, they will need structure. APQP4Wind provides a basic structure and processes, and in contribution or in connection with also something like ISO 9001 as its best. So that will serve one purpose here, to bring structure into your company. Every time you will take a transition, not everybody will like it from the beginning. So it will be a basis for discussion and maybe also a little bit of resistance. Once you succeed with the structure, you find out that you can be very efficient, that you organize the processes, that they are well documented. I've been wondering why we also then start building departments. So every time we have a department, we have a competence cluster. We have a head of this competence cluster who has to manage what happens in the cluster. And we start building up incentives for the performance of the cluster, of the department, rather than maybe the process and our big mission. So that's where we are running into some further needs. And that is the need for having cross-functional methods and tools. And again, APQP4Wind provides quite many of the answers here, provide specific tools, and also provides the philosophy and the timeline how to work with these tools in accordance with the mission of taking a product forwards to the basis for production. So company has to come to a point where they can manage a matrix organization and they can make teamwork. And some of you have played football, I believe. That's one area where you could have been in a wonder team. Maybe you are also in your professional life today. It gives you a completely fantastic feeling. So in particular, the picture of the football team, it's us against the others. And we are so good that we won't let anybody in. And sometimes we are so good that we are getting, I don't know, the Danish word is self-fed or something like that. You are being too satisfied with yourself. So somebody will have to learn then you cannot conquer the world alone. You cannot protect what you have inside your walls, whether it is people or knowledge or what it is, you need to take the risk to tear down that wall, as somebody said in the 80s. And again, APQP4Wind is a tool to do that by defining a common process, by defining some minimum interfaces that we need to have, and in that way stimulating the habit of working together in this DMATS philosophy, optimizing all together. It's not without resistance, it's not without risks. Working in networks are risky. The alternative to working in network might be that you get stuck in your own arrogance and create some weakness over time. So that is one of the themes you could think your strategical journey into, and see how APQP4Wind could support your development of your organization. So, who is next now, Ida?
Hi, everyone. So now we are on to going a little bit back, because now Henning Bach Jokumsen's IT works. So we will just the OEM perspective now, and I will give the word for Henning.
Yes, thank you very much. IT world and working from home don't always help, but I'm glad to be here and to present the OEM perspective. Next. Yes, as you can see, my name is Henning Bach Jokumsen. I'm customer quality management senior specialist at Vestas, and at the same time I'm also chairman of the APQP4Wind board of directors. I've been a part of that the last 5 years also on projects, so I'm very glad for these webinars and to meet you webinars and company members. Yes, next. Yes, the quality assurance methodology for the wind industry. What the background? Vestas took an active part of founding APQP4Wind, and that was to align and to mature the wind industry. We did it because we wanted to help strengthen the cooperation between the OEM and the suppliers. The suppliers, who was reaching out in Denmark to us, OEM, at that time Siemens and Vestas, to how to strengthen this cooperation. And we were very much inspired in the project APQP4Wind about the success that APQP was implemented in the automotive industry. So that's why we adapted APQP for the wind industry, and this to have a common quality assurance methodology, but also a language where we were aligned what we was calling what in the wind industry. So through that we got the quality assurance demand in the APQP, and we also got the PPAP, the product release process. Yes. Next. What does APQP4Wind mean to Vestas? We have seen some challenges. The time to market was or is reduced about 25% yearly over the last 10 years, and we also saw that shrinking our product lifetime cycle with more than 50%. So, and at the same time, we need to improve also the quality. And that's where that we have that APQP4Wind help us reducing the risk. It helps us to to ensure a business case certainty through a quality assurance risk mitigation. And that give us, as you can see here from the bottom, it gives us a lower cost of poor quality because we have the risk mitigation, we have the use the quality tools, the quality control tools, and by that we lower the cost of poor quality. And by lowering the cost of poor quality, we are also lowering the CO, LCO, and in the end, this increase the EBIT. Next. So what is Vestas' expectation within the APQP4 Wind Framework? Through OEM and supplier deployment of APQP4 Wind, we expect that we have this common language in the wind industry, and we get a higher maturity and competency, which will help us all about to promote risk mitigation from the start, so we don't get any surprises at a late stage, that we go from firefighting to preventive actions, that we get a standardized advanced quality planning, and that will result, as you can see here, into continuous improvement, into quality improvement, and to cost of poor quality improvements, reductions. So it gives us a complete transparency and the level of QC tools to identify, contain, and correcting issues. Next. What drives the changes in Vestas? Vestas have a quality management system, and we also have a Vestas way to market. That's a stage gate model that of new products, where and in both areas we have implemented the APQP4 Wind. Example, in our quality management system, we have a separate business process called supplier product qualification. And that, of course, is updated with the APQP4 Wind, with the tools, and some of the tools were there. But when we talked about APQP before, we now mention APQP4 Wind. So, and what we have seen is that APQP4 Wind have been a strong contributor to drive the supplier quality performance for us. An example that Wendan, our supplier quality director in China, who was on the China wind power some weeks ago and presented, then one of the examples is that our Tianjin nacelle factory, here they cut 50% ppm yearly since 2016. So it absolutely helped us getting the new product in at a lot higher level. And that's also why we see this as a big opportunity also we start looking into to integrate it into other the complete value chain. So it's not only the new product, but also about, as mentioned here, transport or construction and service. And all this will, of course, help us reducing risk. Next. So what does it mean for the wind industry? As it mentioned here, we absolutely believe, and we also see already now from Vestas side, cost of poor quality reductions. And that will help us all to increase the EBIT when it's right the first time. And it also enables us that the customer, OEM, and supplier, we are aligned, and from the beginning, or from the request for quotation, and it will accelerate how we work together. And no one can go it alone. It must be aligned. And for us, yes, it's quality, but for Vestas also safety, delivery, and cost requirements. So it will support it all. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Henning, for your input from the OEM perspective. And now it is time for our supplier perspective, where we have Arefeh from FT Technologies. So go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me well? Good. So next slide, please. So my name is Arefeh Taghikhani. I'm the senior engineer at FT Technologies and also APQP4 Wind country ambassador in the United Kingdom. I'm here today to give you a perspective from a supplier side for how we started the implementation process for the APQP4 Wind Framework, what changes we saw throughout this process, and also what steps we took for the full implementation. Next slide, please. So I start with how we started this. We started with a policy, as already pointed out by Bent and Ivan. This was our first step. Now we have a policy at FT to understand the needs and requirements from the customer side to make sure the product at the end satisfies and meets all the requirements from the customer to reduce the product complexity, having the continuous improvement in mind in all processes, providing clear communication to our suppliers and subcontractors about the product quality requirements that we have, also reducing the risk of defect and the cost of poor quality when we're introducing new designs. Also adopting preventative approach to quality, supporting simplifications of processes to reduce the time to market and increase efficiency. And of course, supporting the profitable growth. The policy, the APQP policy is available on our website as well. Next slide, please. So looking at the changes we've seen since we introduced the APQP4 Wind framework, the most important change that we've seen is the cultural change. All of our focuses now is on continuous improvement. We now have a structured work in the various earliest stages of the NPD process for both new product and new process design and development. And it also gave us an opportunity to do a very thorough gap analysis of our business landscape and find the gaps that we need to fill to be able to fully adopt the framework. We now have a better verification and validation procedures for both product and process. And also we have our customers engaged and involved in the NPD processes, which is very beneficial for us. Next slide, please. So what did we do? How did we do this? What steps we took? I think one of the most important steps we took was the supplier conference we held last year in September to engage our supply chain in this journey, in this improvement with us. We also had an awareness training for all the managers, as well as the relevant research and development personnel, quality assurance personnel, sales, and production personnel. We have an internal steering committee who meet at least once a month. We review where we are with the project, and we ensure that everything is going smoothly with the deployment of the framework. For all the standard mature processes that we have already in place in our production, we assign a quality rep for each stage of the process to work and develop the PPAP documentation for each stage. And that is a good basis for us, if you will, to review and improve the processes in the future. That is all from me. Back to you, Ida Marie.
Thanks so much, Arefeh. That was very insightful. And it's very good to get the input from both the OEMs and suppliers on this. And now it's time for a Q&A session. So if you will please write your questions in the Q&A, then we will put them up on the screen if you have any questions. And then we will try to see if Bent, Ivan, or even Arefeh or Henning can respond. So the first question is if there will be more sessions diving deeper into the APQP4 Wind, and I can answer to that. We are planning on doing more sessions where we go into the different benefits of APQP4 Wind. I hope that answers your questions, Eva Maria. And the next one is how to establish and secure the APQP4 Wind across the supply chain or sub-suppliers who are not part of the wind industry.
Thank you for the question. This is Bent trying to answer. I believe we need to look a little into the escalation rules of APQP4 Wind also. Suppliers not being significant, not supplying special characteristics or components that is critical. We can discuss to what extent they need to implement APQP4 Wind, but suppliers being critical to the supply chain, supplying components, having special characteristics. There's no doubt that they must implement APQP4 Wind and the PPAP tools as part of their management system. So if there's suppliers in the supply chain who do not want to do that, then maybe they should consider whether they should have you as a customer or you as a supplier to the wind industry should consider if you are having the right suppliers. Maybe a little tough answer, but I think that is the way it's supposed to be going.
Maybe I can support a little bit. I think, as you have been hearing here, that all is about to reduce risk. So depending on, of course, how your components go into the supply chain, then it is reducing risk. And so it is to be proactive. So I believe it's some of the benefits. So anyhow, I think that all suppliers should try to look into it. And I think most of them will be convinced that it gives value to reduce risk and to have business case certainty. Yes.
The next question is from Venkatesh Subramani. And what is NBD, I guess, is the question. I guess it's we have someone saying it might have been something from one of our guest presenters that talked about MBD. So maybe one of you would be able to answer.
Yeah, I think NPD, it's the new product and process development. Sorry, I should have been more specific. It's NPD.
Perfect, thanks. Okay, so the next question is, are there any recommendations on IT systems that will make APQP4 Wind processes more efficient in managing and handling? That's from Kim Hansen.
Maybe I can give a short. I know, or we know, that there are companies working on and presenting about start presenting about APQP4 Wind Pro, how to support it. And I know also one of our company members are using a company. I think that could be a part later on, maybe for a webinar, but at the moment we cannot appoint anyone, but there are companies who have system where they would like to support it. Okay.
So the next question we have is, where can I read and learn more about DMAT's procedures? And I guess that one is for Ivan.
Can't hear you, even.
Try again. Thanks for the question. It's actually a very good question. If you try to Google DMATs, I think you will find all kinds of other explanation of what it is. So if, first of all, I think it's about looking into the APQP4Wind manual 0.26, and you will find a lot of, say, inspiration points and bullets to think about. Are we really covering this? Are we making sure in our process that we reflect on all these things, and do we build our cross-functional teams in a way so that we are sure that all these things are on board? And it certainly is not if you have to think about environment, safety and transport and decommissioning long after you decided all the designs. So that's one thing, to make sure that you set up a process that enables DMATs. And another sign of not succeeding here is that all kind of suppliers and sub-suppliers come up with improvement needs shortly after the launch, and say, if you asked us from the beginning, we could have done this much better. Now, going to where to learn about it, I think it's a real good question, and that means I would like to take some time to botanize a little bit into that and see if we can find specific resources for learning and reading. For sure, experience shows a lot of areas where it has succeeded, and also a lot of areas where it did not. But it's clearly connected to the option of simultaneous engineering, that you are able to work on more platforms on your design in the same time, and you find a good alignment of what you're doing. So you embrace the whole set of demands and expectations. So I'm sorry, it's still a little bit open answer, but I take on my shoulders to come up with something more specific. Thank you.
And then we have a question for Arefeh.
Yeah. So how long it took for us? It's not finished yet. We started last year. First thing, we had the policy in place and we had the awareness training for everyone. We still have trainings for new personnel as a part of their induction so that they are aware of our aim here. I think it's not a quick thing. It's a long-term plan. We are aiming to have everything ready next year. But since last year that we started the project, any new project that we start for new product design and development, we follow the framework and we try to generate all the documentations needed for a PPAP and have the close communication with the customer. I hope it answers the question.
And we have another question here. Is there any advancement version after APQP4 Wind from Kumaran Ravi?
Yeah, I'll try to answer that. Of course, today we have the manual and we have the toolbox, and it's possible to take a certificate to learn more about APQP4Wind, and it's probably to member. And the questions from a lot of companies is, will it be possible in the future to be APQP4Wind certified as a production unit? And the answer is yes. At the moment, we are working on a sort of assessment tool. So that means that in spring next year, it will be possible to download a sort of self-assessment tool, so you can check yourself and work on improvement. And later, when you are ready, you can get a audit, a certificate from some of our train providers. But we will give more information on our webpage next year. We are not ready, but we will be. Thank you.
And the next question is from Nicoletta Miklaus. Earlier, it was discussed about auditing APQP implementation. Is there a checklist that you could share with us to help and guide us when performing internal audits? I think that is for either Ben or Ivan.
We don't have at the moment a generic checklist. It's a point that we could consider, and also refer to the last answer from Kim. It's a bit in that direction. But if we're talking about utilizing an internal audit, we believe that the preferred approach is that you do your gap analysis, that you put into your system how APQP4Wind requirements are part of your system, and then you audit your internal system based on checklists that you create from how it looks like. The other way around, to say that APQP4Wind is the criteria for the audit itself, will most likely create findings that triggers big discussions, because you come up with findings referring to an external manual. So until it has been put into your system as something you refer to, and somebody did an effort to put it into the system, I believe it's a dangerous approach maybe in an organization. So that's the best advice, but something to work on definitely. So thank you.
We have time for one last question, and that will be this one. I think the right assumption to say APQP4 Wind is based on AIAG standard. Is it correct to say that if we're compliant with AIAG, we'll be compliant with APQP4 Wind with regards to the core tools? And just before we send this off, I will let you know that we will post all questions and try to answer them in a document and put it online on the website for the ones that we are not able to answer right now.
Thank you very much for the question. As I understand, it will be the last one. The question here for me is a little two-sided. It mentions at the end or towards the end regarding core tools. And I believe if we are talking about core tools, you could say being compliant to AIAG would be sufficient. There is, though, still differences in specific requirements on MSA capabilities and so on. There is also another difference on the core tool side, and that is that automotive, we very often have relatively many parts, high numbers, which we do not have in APQP4Wind, or at least not very often, on main components and so on. So also there on the core tool side, on the statistical side, there is a need to work or be capable of working with smaller numbers in a statistically different way and maybe utilize different tools than you normally would do in automotive. For instance, the MSA, having 10 good parts from the production representing the full spread of variation and so on is significantly easier if you've made a run of at least 300 or 1000 parts. But if you are casting one hop, then it's a little difficult to do that. So to some extent, yes, in other areas, not. Referring again back to AIAG, I also believe that saying that complying to that standard will fulfill the requirements for wind is definitely not correct with respect to the phases of APQP as such. Here there is more phases in APQP4Wind than we see in automotive. And finally, again, there is some differences within the industry, some of them again related to the numbers. That's also why APQP4Wind is different on the APQP side towards the end of the project, where many of the initial approvals will be a temporary or a limited release until the volume has been there to finally document capability and so on. So yes, to some extent, but there is still differences. And that's also why the wind industry has taken the initiative to compile their own process and point against specific tools for the wind industry.
Just an addition from my side. One of the intentions with APQP4Wind was also to hit the big variety and diversity in the maturity of actors in the supply chain, and to make it a little bit easier to take the first steps than to go against the very monstrous requirements in the automotive. So one of the areas you see it is that the demands to do capability studies and measurement system analysis is paired to the specific characteristics, which you will not find so clear in the automotive standards. And maybe your question is not heading that way, but you could also say if you have a crew of people being competent with all kind of belts in the blue books, of course it should be easy for them to penetrate the small differences that you will find into APQP4Wind. Finally, if you look at the FMEA, I think the scoring tables made in APQP4Wind are ingenious, very clever. I was not part of it, but I still say they are very clever, and it's much more elegant than what you find in the AAIG, where you find in the new VDA AAIG FMEA book a very, very nasty matrix. So I think APQP4Wind is somewhere ahead of AAIG. But if you have black belts in that area, it should be a piece of cake of them for these people to grasp the differences.
Yes, and maybe I'll end it then. And that is exactly the reason why we made APQP4Wind, that we have a common language. That because our suppliers for Vestas and Siemens before and OEMs saying, yeah, you twisted APQP from automotive into this way and the other one in another way. So here we now get one language, and this is APQP4Wind, how we use it. So it's applied to the wind industry.
Thank you everyone to Henning, Arefeh, Bent and Ivan for your presentations and your input today. It was very insightful. And we also would like to thank all of you participants for joining today. And we hope that you learned something from this webinar. And if you have any questions at all other than the ones that were posted, you can always write us an email on marketing@apqp4wind.org or contact@apqp4wind.org, depending on what your topic is. And we will also be posting the answers to these questions on the website, along with the presentations and the recordings. And you will all get an email after the webinars with the links to these recordings and presentations. And I will just leave on the slide so you can see our contact information. As you can see, we have our team here, and we also have a LinkedIn page that you can go and visit, and please follow us if you want to get the latest news and updates, and also upcoming webinars from APQP4Wind. And in the end, we just have one little survey that we would love for you to answer, so we can get an idea of how useful you found this webinar. And I will just post the survey question here. And please answer that before you leave. And then thank you so much for joining today, and have a great day.